Crisis webinar presented by JJR Marketing. And Marie Lazzara is going to help us, as well as myself. My name is Kylie Knurr, and I'm a project manager here at JJR. So who is JJR? So just a little bit of background, because I know some of our attendees are not really familiar with us. So we were founded in 2006. We are one of Chicago's fastest growing marketing and public relations agencies. Our mission is to place a client's brand in the center of their most influential media, creating buzz, leads, referrals, sales, growth, and at the end of the day, loyal brand advocates. Our goal is to elevate organizations, to empower them to connect through relationship building channels. So we've recently been awarded over 20 awards for our creative work in both marketing and public relations. We'll get into a couple more specific ones here in the next couple slides when we introduce Marie. Oops. Awesome. So next we've got Marie Lazzara. So she is on with us. She is our public relations manager here at JJR Marketing. So just a little bit of facts and kind of background about Marie so that you know who you're learning from. So she spent 25 years in the public relations industry, 17 years as a feature reporter in the Chicago area and suburbs. She's been awarded by the Publicity Club of Chicago and the CADM, which is the Chicago Association of Direct Marketing, for her work on campaigns. She's got placements in outlets like Chicago Tribune, ABC7, Fox 32, NBC5, Univision, and more. And she was also just awarded as an influential woman in business from the Daily Herald Business Ledger. And Marie has been with JJR Marketing for 8 years, and she works with several varieties of clients. It's not like we have one type, so she is well-versed in many different fields and PR of all sorts. So I'm going to turn it over to Marie to talk about a PR crisis and what you can do in the event of a PR crisis at your company.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Jim, for joining us. And I want to thank all the other attendees who will be joining us. So what I want to start out with is, what is public relations? Well, it's what it does is it engages, informs, it creates dialogue about a corporate message of interest. So as JJR's public relations manager, I use my experience to build up relationships with many different types of media, actually. So it could be traditional print, radio, TV, social media, and podcasts, which are exploding as an alternative media outlet. So what I'm trying to do is engage in a conversation with the media about the ideas and expertise that our clients are giving us. So as journalists and editors ourselves, we've earned the media's respect for pitching relative news angles, as well as for our integrity and expert writing. Now, of course, we want to celebrate clients' good news and services and books, but unfortunately, there is a flip side to public relations, and that really encompasses crises. So you have your accidents, you have defective items, scandals, acts of God, which could be like a tornado or a flood or a hurricane, miscommunication of messages, and that's going to cause negative results and impact to one's brand or reputation. So those things can become a PR crisis. And as PR experts, we need to have a plan to mitigate, calm down those situations while also being transparent and honest with the media. So how a PR team responds can measure how bad that impact becomes. Okay. And we're going to learn about 3 types of PR crises. So again, a PR crisis is any situation that's going to threaten the reputation of a client, which can be further damaged by negative media attention. It could be a dispute, an accident, disaster. But it's also important to understand the kinds of crisis situations so we can correctly minimize the incident in the eyes of the media. So one happens to be a creeping crisis. And this is where a crisis situation is going to grow to disturbing proportions, where things are going to get out of control. And one example that I found that can highlight this situation is the Volkswagen fiasco example of 2017. Boy, that's 5 years ago. Well, what happened with Volkswagen, which is a very popular brand of automobile that a lot of people like, it installed defeat devices in its diesel vehicles, which altered emission levels so that they would test lower. Now, some of the missteps that the company also did was not communicating this with VW dealers, customers, shareholders, and not having a clear initial statement. The automaker also claimed that a limited number of car models had such a device, but in reality, more vehicles were affected. So that's an example of a creeping crisis. A slow burn is where a company is going to experience a lawsuit, discriminatory complaint, major operational decisions that can cause distress, and official governmental investigations, including involving maybe a healthcare organization or its employees or reputation, but also a business as well. And the perfect example for this was the double whammy of crises that happened to Peloton. And everybody knows about Peloton. You see people riding their bikes, watching a screen with an instructor taking them on mountainous terrains or different other kinds of landscapes. So they can feel that outdoor experience. Well, the company's bike was featured on a show on HBO Max called And Just Like That, which is the revival of Sex and the City. So a major character, and I'm not going to give anything away because the news is already out on this, Mr. Big, he's played by actor Chris Noth. He dies from a heart attack while doing a workout on the bike. So what happens? Well, Peloton's share price suffered a huge drop in December 2021. Now, also should add that the company did not send a bike to be, seen on the show. The show bought the bike on its own right. Okay, so you have this crisis. So what does Peloton do? Well, they respond by creating an ad with Chris Noth and Peloton instructor Jess King, who is also on the show playing a fictitious Peloton instructor. The spin was that it was okay to do these Peloton workouts. And then you have Ryan Reynolds providing a voiceover touting the health benefits of regular cycling. So, okay, so we kind of smooth that media crisis, right? Guess what? Something else pops up. What pops up? Well, actor Chris Noth was then accused of sexual assault by two women, and that's according to the Hollywood Reporter. So, wow, what does Peloton do? It has to react quickly and decisively. So it pulled out its ad featuring Noth to just, we don't want anything to do with this man whatsoever. But before that ad was yanked, it had been viewed by more than 3 million times according to Newsweek. So that's what a slow burn crisis is. A sudden crisis is where you have examples of a patient death, a serious on-site accident, insane or dangerous behaviors by one at a location controlled by your healthcare organization, and criminal activity at a company site or committed by company employees. So an example that I found of this was CVS Health. CVS, of course, is a major pharmacy chain that competes with Walgreens and other stores. So it recently fired several employees, which include executives, following an internal investigation of how this major pharmacy chain handled sexual harassment complaints. The CEO gave a statement saying, we're not going to tolerate this abusive behavior. We're not going to tolerate this discriminatory behavior and actions. And also CVS Health created an office of workplace assistance to give employees a resource to report such incidents of sexual harassment. So now we've outlined 3 PR crisis situations. Now we have to help you find a plan of action. Go ahead. So why do you need a crisis plan? Well, according to the Nevada Small Business Council, it is an important component of any disaster plan. It can act as a guide to help you quickly contain the crisis and recover from its impact. So whether it's a weather disaster, a highly publicized lawsuit, or a bad product review, Reaction has to be immediate, focused, and emphatic. What I say is we all have insurance plans. So we have insurance to cover our cars, our homes, our health. Think of a PR crisis plan as your PR insurance policy or plan. So you have it right there at your fingertips. So now we've gone to how do we, create a crisis plan? Well, step one is you should have the right team and process to handle such a PR crisis. You may ask yourself, is this something you can handle internally, or do you need to get a PR firm involved? And who you want on your crisis team is you want a senior management person, you want a second in command in case of the absence of a senior management representative, and you want a public relations spokesperson. So, and you want these people to be comfortable in speaking with the media, who they can expertly deliver the message. But additionally, you also want to have an expert social media team to handle negative commentary. So Kylie, do you want to address that area of social media?
Yeah, so something that Marie and I were talking about on what might be important to you guys as attendees was the social media aspect. So you've probably seen where sometimes a PR crisis can even start from social media, from something a team member said, or an old post by somebody or anything like that. So kind of the conclusion we came to was that if you don't have someone that regularly monitors social media, during this time, it's a great idea to put somebody in that place so they can keep an eye on things. If you don't respond, it looks worse than leaving it and acting like it didn't happen. So we'll talk about a holding statement, and that's something that you'll want your social media person to be ready with so that they can reply to a lot of these statements people are making, just so you can set the story straight, because sometimes it's just in your industry or it's kind of confined to a small space, but if it goes wild on social media, it can really get out of hand. So we were just talking, and we think making sure that somebody's in place to handle these comments and messages is great if you don't normally have someone there. And we'll talk about a holding statement, and that would be what you'd put out to everybody. So
so what we're going to do is you're going to have to follow a process once you get your team in place. So under step 2, follow the process, and under that is identify and alert. Identify the problem that has occurred and immediately alert management. You don't want to waste time on this. You got to get on top of it right now and find out what that problem is. And then the next step is gather the facts. So become a reporter. Do ask questions like who, why, when, where, how. You document all those facts in of the incident, and you get information from those involved, so we understand the totality of this situation. And then the next step is to prepare to communicate. So you work eternally with your team or with a public relations agency to develop the following: a holding statement, which we will get to in a moment, to use when communicating with the media, an easy to read script for staff to use for any media inquiries, so they don't have to second guess. They know what they can say if a reporter calls them about the situation. And also you need to brief all company employees on the latest crisis information and communication procedures to follow. You don't want your employees to find out the situation in the media, because that could be a totally different angle. They should hear it directly from you. And and then we have the communication procedures to follow. So then we have disclose information. You refer media to a public relations agency or a team representative handling the company's communications for information about the incident. So that is the point person that will be responsible for disseminating information. And then you follow up with the media. You find updates, you give them to the media as appropriate on the recovery in regards to the situation. So, you have updates, new information, tell the media, and then that will help to mitigate the situation. So I mentioned before a holding statement. What is a holding statement? Well, first, the purpose of doing that is having it for any media inquiries in regards to a crisis situation. And a statement is used in response to questions from the media. So it's not distributed as a press announcement. It has to include 4 key messages. And those are: the company cares about the situation. You know, you have to show empathy. You have to show feelings. You don't want the media to see you as, okay, the situation happened and they're not going to do anything about it. No. That's going to ruin your reputation. So you must show that you care about the situation and you're going to do something about it. But you also want to tell people what the company is about, because they may not know what your company does. So you'd like to, give some information about the services it provides, or what it does in the world, so to speak. You need responsive action. The message has to say, what are you going to do about this situation and how you're going to be doing it? And then, of course, positive reinforcement that you're going to carry out with what you're planning, and this isn't going to happen again. Or maybe you're going to do something so that the situation doesn't happen again, or there is a resource for people if they see something. And with the social media, Kylie, maybe you want to explain that.
Yeah, I don't think anything new. We kind of covered it on the last slide. But now that you know what a holding statement is, just something short and sweet. And I did mention to Marie, dependent on where, people are commenting at, it might be, you might have to edit this to be super short. I know Twitter picks things up and it shares like crazy, and that there's a pretty small character limit. So obviously you might have to edit accordingly to make sure that you get your message out. But we should always be ready to share the holding statement back to different people online, so everything is consistent throughout.
Okay. And there are things that you really should avoid doing. One is just getting your emotions involved in the reaction. Of course, there's some sadness, there's some anger, but you don't want to say something that might get back to you, that you might later regret. Right now, you must put your emotions aside, because this is the time to gather facts in a calm and common sense manner. It's not time to blame people in the crisis or have any kind of negative response. Also, when you have the facts, you'll have the answers that you need to lead a rational conversation with the media. If you don't have an answer, say so. Don't say no comment. Let whoever is asking the questions know that you're going to get back to that person with an official statement and further details. And then to get caught up thinking about the crisis, that's easy for me to say, because whenever something bad happens to people, sometimes they tend to dwell upon it, thinking, what could have I done differently? How did this happen? What do I do now? Thing is, you have to get back in the saddle and run your daily operations of your business and conduct yourself in a very professional manner, because you have a plan that's going to be helping you mitigate the situation. So that's what I have to say about those things. Now, how can you turn a crisis around? Because, yes, this is a bad situation, but there's always a silver lining to it. There's always an opportunity to create a positive moment. Well, I found an example from Newsweek, and it talks about cosmetic giant Estee Lauder ousting an executive over a racist Instagram. Now, the company prepared a statement. This is kind of a holding statement, if you will, saying that his post caused widespread offense, are damaging to our efforts to drive inclusivity both inside and outside our walls, and do not reflect the judgment we expect of our leaders. If you think about it, this senior executive was with the company for 31 years, and he oversaw very popular and well-known brands like Clinique and MAC. And ladies, we've all used these cosmetics millions of times. So the ousted executive apologized for his post. Now, further in the statement by Estee Lauder, the company said inclusion, diversity, and equity are some of the company's core values. And to support that statement, the company in 2021 created a new Equity and Engagement Center of Excellence after it received criticism for not hiring enough Black employees or purchasing many products from Black-owned businesses. So that's an example of how you can turn it into a positive moment. Are there any questions that we can answer?
And I'm just going to start with my one question that I had that I was thinking if I were somebody attending. So really, Marie, what people can do like today is basically make sure they have the right people in place for when a crisis happens, because obviously you can't really make, you know, your entire holding statement until you know what the crisis is, but you could maybe start it and make sure that you have the right people in place, make sure everybody knows the procedure. If something happens ahead of time, hey guys, you cannot speak to anybody until we give you our official plan, but it's almost, you know, the fine details can wait, but there are things you can do today to be ready for a crisis to hit.
That's exactly right. You know, why not start getting things in place? Find that senior management representative, or find also another person to back him or her up. You know, get those people in place. And yes, I think it's better to prepare than to, oh, okay, the crisis hits. Who are we going to go to? What are we going to do? What, you know, if you get some of those people in place beforehand, I think that would save some heartache.
Yeah, and a little bit of your script for your holding statement, because as that stuff is going on, your mind is going to be all over the place. That's probably the last thing you want to do is, you know, finite the rest of that. So.
Oh, and also find that social media expert. It's very important these days as people are learning about news instantly from Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. You know, you know, you think you'd read the newspaper the next day to get the news, not anymore. So yeah, you want to have those people in place before anything happens.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Jim, any questions that you might have? I see he's muted, so he might not have his mic ability. I'm going to just ask one final question that we kind of talked about yesterday and we weren't set on an answer, but is there a clear indicator of when you can handle a PR crisis yourself or when you might need a PR agency to step in? And I know what we kind of talked about was that there's a lot of determining factors on, you know, the severity of this event and, you know, what's the size of your team? How many people are familiar with your business? You know, and has it taken off on social media and the news? So we just kind of came down to that. There's a lot of determining factors. So it's kind of hard to say, hey, you can handle this yourself. But we were saying that a lot of times you could probably consult a PR firm and they could give you advice whether they think that you need their help or not.
Exactly, and it's based on the crisis situation. You know, is it something that you can handle with the team at hand? Or if it is a larger crisis, you may want to consult a public relations firm for some guidance. You know.
Awesome. Okay, and Jim, I saw you said no questions on your end, so awesome. So then I believe, Marie, that is all we have. Hopefully you guys took something away. We are going to send this recording so you've got it. You can save it to your files so you can watch it again or reference it. We'll send the PowerPoint as well so you can just flip through the slides if needed. Thank you, Jim, for joining us, and thank you to the other attendees who signed up. We'll be sure that you guys get the PowerPoint as well. And we hope that you took away something good and that if you're ever in a PR crisis and need some help, that JJR Marketing can be of assistance to help guide you or even help handle your PR crisis.
Thank you again. And thank you, Jim, for joining us. And yes, we do hope that the information that I presented can help maybe spark some ideas about getting a team in place, getting some stuff prepared before a major crisis occurs.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful Thursday. We're getting close to the weekend, so have a nice weekend as well.
Yes, thank you again, Kylie. Thank you. And thank you, Jim, for joining us.
Yep. Thank you. Bye-bye.